Hello and welcome to the Middle East Report. In this programme today we'll be discussing the recent presidential elections in Egypt, and we're discussing what are the implications of the Muslim Brotherhood's candidate Mohamed Morsi coming to power, and what does this mean for Egypt, and more importantly what does this mean for Egyptian Christians who feel very threatened and intimidated by the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood. We'll also be discussing the Muslim Brotherhood's policies towards the Arab world and towards the Middle East, and we've seen a rise in rhetoric, particularly against Israel and against the Coptic Christians in Egypt since the Muslim Brotherhood have hijacked what has been known as the Arab Spring. And so to join me today, I'm joined by Kiri Kawande, who is the press officer for Christian Solidarity Worldwide, and Pastor Wagi Abdul Masi from the London Arab Evangelical Church in Egypt. Hello and welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
Kiri, can you explain a little bit about your background, how you came to know the Lord and how you end up working as an extremely good press officer for Christian Solidarity Worldwide?
Well, thank you. Firstly, let me say it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having us on today. Well, I worked as a reporter actually, and after a while of reporting the daily news, I felt I wanted to focus on stories that really matter to me. And when I read about CSW's ministry, I was drawn to that. Thankfully, they had a vacancy as a press officer, and I crossed the aisle and got involved, and I have not regretted it. It's a very, very rewarding ministry.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the nature of the work that you do? Because it's very important work that you do, raising awareness of the plight of Christians suffering persecution throughout the world.
Absolutely. We're an advocacy organisation, so our motto is to be the voice for the voiceless. We want to amplify the voices of persecuted Christians around the world. In the corridors of power, we work in Congress, UK Parliament, the European Union, and at the UN as well. We work with a number of legislators and opinion formers, and we try to not only raise awareness, but push them to take concrete action that will make a difference on the ground for persecuted Christians. We work in about 25 countries worldwide. One day we hope to work in more. Unfortunately, Christians are persecuted in a number of countries, and we can't cover them all, but we do have a presence in Africa and the Middle East, South Asia, East Asia.
Yeah. And Pastor Wagi, it's a great privilege to have an Egyptian Christian on the programme today, particularly to talk, as we're talking about Egypt. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to know the Lord, and particularly how he led you to become a pastor of an Arab church here in London?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. And actually, I came to the Lord when I was 14 years old. I grew up in a Christian family in a Muslim country, which is Egypt. And actually, I felt the calling to be a pastor when I was in secondary school. So I became a pastor very young, was 22 years old, ordained pastor. And I came to England to start the Arabic Church with the London Baptist Association since '94.
What was it like growing up as a Christian in Egypt, particularly evangelical Christian?
Yeah, actually, when I was the only Christian in my classroom, and I was the only evangelical in the religion class when we had some religion classes at that time. So I felt the minority all the time, and that's why I started to think about joining the majority and studying Islam, and the Lord found me in the way. It wasn't easy to grow up in a different society, in a Muslim society, and we had some persecution. It's not like today. But it was like, you will not find yourself in the education if you are qualified to do things. Sometimes you would not do it. For example, I was a football player, and I didn't have the chance to play just because my surname is Abdul Masih, and Abdul Masih means the servant of Christ. so they easily can pick me up as a Christian, and I would not have the privilege to to even practice the hobby you have.
And what other forms of discrimination did you face? I mean, it's bad that you weren't allowed to play football, but were you picked on at school? Were you marginalised because of your Christian faith?
Usually, yes. It's not only. I didn't face that much persecution, but there is a higher level of persecution. Like people, because of their faith, they spend some time in prison. They've been jailed just because especially if a Muslim decided or felt like he wants to be a Christian, so definitely he will find a very high persecution.
But the Christian presence in Egypt has been predates Islam, and the church, particularly the Coptic Church, is if not one of the oldest, if not one of the oldest churches in the world. What has kept that Christian presence in Egypt when we've seen other Middle Eastern countries really don't have a Christian presence?
Actually, the church in Egypt, founded by Mark, Saint Mark, who wrote the Gospel of Mark. So it's one of the oldest churches, as you said. It's from the 1st century, and the Alexandria is one of the main theological chairs in the church history. Or it was the main for a while. What made the church survive in Egypt? Because when Islam came to Egypt in the 6th century, Christians had 3 options. One, to convert to Islam. The other one, to pay the jizya, which is not a tax, but a punishment because they are not a Muslim. And the third is to die. Which means our grandparents or great-grandparents were rich enough to pay some money, to pay the jizya to the governor. The church ran under a severe persecution since the 6th century up till today, and survived, because usually the church would survive under persecution, would decline under the rest. What you call comfort life, comfort dune, the church will decline. And I think the church continued growing in Egypt and standed because of the persecution and because of the faith.
And Kieran, I just want to bring you into this one as well. So with the work you're doing with CSW, I mean, what is your organisation's position in concerning the Arab Spring? And we've seen the fall of President Mubarak, those amazing historical scenes in January of 2011, in which millions of ordinary Egyptians, both Muslims and Christians, took to the streets to oppose the regime of President Mubarak. And now, since the fall of Mubarak, what's the situation been like for Christians living in Egypt?
Well, as you said, the Arab Spring did, well, it changed the whole face of the Middle East, indeed. And in fact, initially, apart from the euphoria of seeing people rise up for freedom and democracy, we were also concerned that it also lifted the lid in terms of peace and security. Already there was a problem with impunity with regards to attacks against Christians, but